Hello and welcome to episode 253 of the Random Nintendo Podcast. I'm Jason.
And I'm Angel.
I am Kevin.
And this episode is called Around the Indie World. There's a good chunk of what we're going to be talking about is Nintendo's latest Indie World Showcase, including impressions of multiple titles from the presentation. Fez, There's No Game Wrong to Mention, the demo of the upcoming Aerial Knights Never Yield. Plus we're going to talk about some not indie third-party stuff, news big, small, and licensed with the Great Ace Attorney, those rumors of Microsoft doing something with the Switch, and of all things, a Hot Wheels game. Angel, you're going to explain that one when we get to it, because that's all you. But yeah, there are timestamps available for all the topics on the blog post at randomtown.com. But with so many of these episodes' topics tying into Indie World, we could just get right into it. Let's just start there. I mean, Indie World is about a week and change ago at this point. What did you guys think of it? Or Angel, let's start with you, I guess. What did you think of it?
What did I think of it? That's such a very deep question.
Mm-hmm.
I think for the first time in a long time, I was... my eyes were pleasant. My eyes were happy with what they were seeing. I don't know. I think... I don't know. Yeah, for the past couple years, I feel like we've joked we've joked about around here the RC2D platformer.
Mm-hmm.
I think for a while, like we started getting a shift to a simplistic 3D puzzler, which there's still plenty of, but it feels like now we're starting to get into more action-y style games. There's so many action style games, like 3D action games, but they all have, for the most part, very different art direction. And I don't know, it was just interesting to see. Like, overall, I could say that just about every game like that appeared, I at the very least was like, oh, this looks neat. Even if it's just like on a visual level. Like, I probably don't see myself playing too many of these. Some just seem cool, but I don't know, it's just nice seeing the diversity, I guess is what I'm trying to say. I mean, stuff like, if anything, I guess the other thing that kind of took me off guard was just hearing the devs talk about like the Aztech Forgotten Gods, just because he was speaking in Spanish, and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool. It was just nice seeing like a devs from Mexico like talk about their games and just seeing like what they can put out. I mean, the game looks interesting just from what little we saw, just like, blending the ancient civilization, like, I guess, theme with a super future high-tech world. It's almost like I remember Jason and I were talking about this, and Jason brought up how it's kind of similar to the other, I guess,
it reminds me of Raji.
Culture, action, yeah.
Yeah, there seems to be this like cloth cut now, which is cool, but it's a good thing. Like, both have kind of a similar premise of expressing a developer's culture through the lens of like a God of War, Prince of Persia style action game. So like Raji, what I was saying to you at the time was, Raji's Indian culture, Aztec's obviously Mexican culture, like you're saying, but the idea of kind of like putting it through the funnel of like, all right, well, how we teach about culture that doesn't have a lot of representation in gaming necessarily, let's do it through this kind of lens is cool. Like, because Raji did it really well. It's like, it kind of blended traditional Indian myth and religion. Aztec seems like it's doing that, but also being futuristic, so it's being a little more its own thing. But it is cool that, like, if other cultures like hopped on this bandwagon, I'm cool with like an Epcot of action adventure games going forward. Like, that'd be fine with me. Like, I think it's a really cool way to do it.
And keep it unique, because, like we mentioned, both of these, like Raji and Aztec, are very different, like, aesthetically. But, yeah, at the end of the day, they're both action-oriented games. And then there were pretty much any of the games from, like, I don't know what it's called. I'm going to butcher the name, Annapoma. I know that's not it. I think Annapoma.
Interactive.
Annapurna, yeah. Annapoma, I think, is a deli near my house.
Maybe they're making games now.
Yeah, like,
they could be indie.
But, the stuff like they're putting out as well is also just kind of interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Just visually. Some of them, like, could be fun, but, yeah, for the most part, yeah, overall, I'm pretty pleased.
I'm surprised you didn't name drop or even bring up your favorite franchise gang a game in the presentation. Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge, Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, Shredder's Revenge.
I guess because it's pretty much in... It was created as a beat 'em up, which is, I would say, my least favorite genre of video game. I you would almost never catch me playing a beat 'em up game on my own. The only reason I would ever consider playing one is if we have like a group of friends that really want to play it, and I'm not gonna be the one to go against the majority in something like that. So I would just end up playing it as a result, even if it's Ninja Turtles.
Kevin, how do you feel about beat 'em ups? Because I was gonna say I'm actually in the same boat, but I don't know if we're weird or if we're actually more normal than we think. Like, do you like old school beat 'em ups, Kevin?
I mean, the only beat 'em up that I ever really played was Turtles in Time, and that
Which
awful
this is a
Turtles in
throwback
Time
to.
remake.
Yeah.
Oh, the Ubisoft one?
Yeah, the Ubisoft one.
Yeah, because I mean, like... Oh, yeah, go for it.
Wait, how did you feel about that Turtles in Time remake?
I never played it.
Like, I
didn't... Okay. Yeah, I didn't even... I mean,
well, your brother...
I acknowledge it existed.
I think your brother played it, right?
I don't think so either, because neither of us owned it. Or maybe
really?
we did.
Because I remember it feeling
we...
completely off. Like, when we played it, we were like, something is very, very off about this game. And
maybe you guys
your brother
played
was defending it a little bit. Oh, we played it for like a level. But aside from that beat 'em up, the only other one that I really played was Scott Pilgrim vs. the World. The game. And that one was really fun. But aside from that, I really don't play beat 'em ups.
Scott Pilgrim's a bit modernized, right? Like compared to like the early 90s ones where like... Because Scott Pilgrim, was there like a leveling system or experience or anything like that? Or was it just straight up you beat up and nothing else happens?
I believe you do level up, but I think you get like some like abilities that you grab or something like that. I don't remember the game too well. That game was really hard at some point.
It's back on Switch now too for anyone who wants to check it out.
I mean, there has to be some kind of like meat to the combat, which at that point, like, because you could argue like games like Devil May Cry, Bayonetta, God of War, like they're kind of beat 'em ups, but I guess they also have like their own like skill tree. You don't end the game with the same moves you started with.
Right.
The beat 'em ups that I'm like specifically referring to are mainly those arcadey ones where you never learn any new moves. It's literally the same attacks you do all the way from the beginning all the way to the end. I just get really bored of them, like really, really fast. Which is kind of the same reason I don't really play a lot of the Dynasty style games, just because they could be fun. I mean, I'm sure they're obviously very popular. I mean, obviously the Ninja Turtle arcade game, like Turtles in Time, it's like one of the most highly regarded arcade games. As much as I love Ninja Turtles, I like to think I'm a pretty big Ninja Turtle fan.
Understatement.
Yeah,
of the
it's
decade,
it's like I'll buy these games. Like I think just about every Ninja Turtle arcade style beat 'em up game, but I'll maybe play them for like 10 minutes and I'll be over it. But but when you're playing with a group of friends, like more like case in point, like Jason and I and two other friends were playing through Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3.
Yeah.
That one you do get some new moves down the line. But
and it has some like light exploration of levels, although we're speed running it, and it has some mechanics for leveling up, and there's strategies for group attacks. Like it has a little more to it,
there's some depth to it, but I don't feel really incentivized to learn it. Like I don't know. It kind of ends up like suffering from the same problems because a lot of the attacks you do, like they don't feel like they have any weight to them. Like you're kind of just throwing out attacks, and I mean. Yeah, the combos connect or don't connect. I mean, you're going to go through your whole... I could just keep mashing the same button and pretty much like everything, like I guess is unreactive to what you do, I guess we'll say.
Sure.
I don't know. Everything is, I don't know, fun to play with the friends, but yeah, otherwise I never would have. The only one that I think I played through and enjoyed recently-ish is probably Castle Crashers, because that's definitely a beat 'em up. But I don't know what it was about that one that, like, separated it. Because, I do love games like Contra and, like, I guess arcade shooters. I don't know, like, because, like,
different.
for the most part,
that's different.
Like, even though, like, you can, in theory, like, play through the whole, or Metal Slug, like, you do get, like, you could play with the machine gun the whole time. In theory, the controls never evolve from what you play in the beginning. But, I don't know, I just find them more fun. Maybe it is the fact that you do pick up weapons at random intervals, and it does kind of change up.
That's
the
what's
game
different.
Time.
Yeah, I think.
But yeah, I mean, Turtles in Time. I mean, or this game, the Ninja Turtle one. Like, just looking at the footage, it does look like the combat is maybe just deep enough that it's not as basic as the original ones. But I can be excited about it. Like the other Ninja Turtle games from Konami that we played on the GameCube with my brother, Like those, you did learn new moves, you evolve your skill tree, blah blah blah. Like it does get deeper over time, and that was really fun. The first one didn't have any of that, but I think because it was the first Ninja Turtle game in a while and it was 3D, we kind of just powered through it. And like I said, if you're playing it with someone else, it's always a little more fun, even if the combat is kind of simplistic. Because, like when we're playing Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I feel like I'm more engaged in the conversation we're having with our friends than the actual game itself.
Oh, I for sure am. Like when I started trying to attack a boss with my bare hands when I'm supposed to use a Gatling gun, I didn't even notice because I was too busy talking to you guys. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I can't be bothered to time my super when I'm supposed to use it. I literally just trigger it the moment I get it.
Well, that's the thing. You're like, oh, well, the game, like, I don't have the motivation to, like, there's no strategy. I just use the attacks and plow through. That's because you're not playing the game like how they intended it. And I think that's just like
because it makes no difference because we're still plowing through the whole thing.
But I think that's like, the difference.
I haven't had to like be like, oh man, I should save my super because then I could avoid this situation. It's more like, nope, it didn't matter because we still like melt their health bars. But,
yeah, that's also because we leveled up beyond what they recommend. But no, I was gonna say I think that's the difference between like something like Marvel Ultimate Alliance 3 and the early 90s beat 'em ups. Like I do get why people are hyped if they were fans of Turtles in Time, and like the game has a ton of personality. Shredder's Revenge, like it looks fun.
Visually, like they did everything right.
Like it looks like it has like it looks like fun to like engage with, not necessarily fun to play. You know what I mean? But but I think the difference is with like to me at least, and I thought it was crazy when I started to pose this question. You guys were like, oh, what do you think of beat 'em ups? I was really worried I was gonna be the weird one that didn't like beat 'em ups. But I think the difference between like Marvel Ultimate Alliance or Turtles in Time is you're right. Marvel Ultimate Alliance, we don't need to necessarily play it how they intend to still win, but the option's there. I feel like the early 90s beat 'em ups, to your point, Angel, don't have the option of you could play it this way, you could play it that way. It's just this is how you play it, and it's just kind of rote and repetitive, and I guess there's different buttons you can hit, but that's it. Like, that's literally it. There's no, like, mobility, structure.
If the combat or something about the mobility was just slightly altered in Marvel Ultimate Alliance, I feel like I'd be more incentivized to try to learn it. But I already don't really like how it feels to attack. How it feels to like use some of these special moves. That it's just kind of like, it's just, I don't know. It feels more of a hindrance. Like literally, the fact we're chatting and laughing about how many bad decisions or how we're not using moves at the right time is making it for me, or is like keeping me from, I guess, completely dropping it.
Yeah, I guess it's still. I was just gonna say, I guess it's still though to me is a step up from like the early 90s beat 'em ups because like the thing.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Yeah, because like the thing that like, and I'm wondering how Shredder's Revenge will handle this, but the thing that like, to your point about Metal Slug or shooters like Contra is like there's variety, right? Like beat 'em up, there's no thinking really with beat 'em ups. Like it's not like you're like, oh, on this enemy I should use this attack, so he's gonna use that attack. I mean, a little of that, but it's not like a fighting game where you're trying to like play mental chess with someone. It's just do I hit A, B, or A plus B or whatever. Like even like side scroll, you could argue like all games of that era, like side scrollers. Oh well, you're just moving and jumping, but like when you move and when you jump, like there's some structure to it.
Yeah,
this is
learning,
really just exactly, and this is just waves of enemies and then more waves of enemies and then maybe some more. So,
like I'm definitely looking forward to eventually getting Ghosts and Goblins Resurrection, just because that one, it's pretty much like you're just running and jumping and shooting the whole time, but you pretty much have to do everything perfectly. Like you have to learn the level design. You have to know exactly when you have to jump, exactly when you have to halt or use your fully committal jump that they gave Arthur. But that's just, well, you can't change your aerial momentum once you leave the ground, which is a pretty big deal in 2D side scrollers where it's more norm. But that's pretty much
my
thought.
I was going to say, I will say, it was surprising to see a brand as big as Ninja Turtles pop up in the presentation. Like, I get why. The publisher, Dotemu or whatever, Dotemu, whatever their name is, they're considered an indie. Their last release, which also is an existing license, Streets of Rage 4, is considered indie. It's kind of like how House of the Dead Remake popped up in the presentation. Like, yes, it's a Sega IP, but now it's a dormant one that indie is sort of taking the reins of. The same thing happened with Wonder Boy. But it was still a little jarring to see like major Nickelodeon IP be shown along like some actual underdogs, like actual indie games. You know what I mean? Like it was definitely it was definitely
a normal House of the Dead, right?
What?
It wasn't like a Typing of the Dead or something?
No, it's straight up House of the Dead. Yeah, it's a remake of the original. And I'm curious to see if they're going to use pointer controls or motion controls or sticks or what, but putting it on Switch, one of the things that I feel like the Wii was very underappreciated for was good light gun games. I mean, Ghost Squad's a lot of fun. They had the Zapper, they had Link's Crossbow Training. Like, the Switch has all the same tech. So if this is the start of some sort of light gun renaissance, sure, let's do it. Like, that'd be cool, I think. But I do think, like, just in general, it was interesting to see how brands within the presentation are now, like, able to carry the show itself. And I mean, like, it used to be we had multiple years before Indie World was Indie World, where everything was Nindies. Remember that? Like, the Nindy brand. And on some level, I do kind of miss that. Granted, for the show, it's hard to do punny titles for episodes about the presentation. Like, you can't do Around the Nindies like you do Around the Indie World. And admittedly, the name doesn't actually work when so many of the games shown, or in this case, all the games shown, are available across multiple platforms. Like, I think this is the first Indie World showcase where the press release didn't say exclusive or first on Switch anywhere. Like, all of it is cross-platform. But, like, what I thought was interesting...
Oh, really? None of it was exclusive?
Yeah. None of it is fully exclusive. Yeah.
Wow.
There were some that were like, oh, it launched on Switch on this day, or maybe it'll come to Switch on that day, or this before that. But I Control-F did a search in the press release. It doesn't say exclusive. It doesn't say first on Switch. It doesn't say console exclusive or console first. The word first is nowhere in the press release. So...
How does that make you feel as your... Nintendo's Ashley Simpson?
Well, I
do you wish they had a stranglehold more on some kind of exclusivity? Or you're like, you know what? It doesn't matter because the Switch version is probably still going to sell the best.
It's a good question. Well, I think it kind of goes back to what I was starting to say about brands almost. I think we're at the point where, I mean, it would help if they had some exclusives maybe, but I don't know if the presentation needs the exclusives. I think indies are a powerhouse enough that, like they were Nindies at one point because they needed some sort of umbrella to put them all under to get people to care. But now these games are so big that just getting them on your system, exclusive or not, is like enough. You know what I mean? Like the fact that they obviously, TMNT and House of Dead are brands that are like known to the general populace. But I'm talking about the way they like closed out the show with Oxenfree 2. They teased it the exact same way that a sequel to a major third-party release would be teased. And the reaction online seemed pretty strong among that fan base. And then, they describe like Ollie Ollie World as like, hey, Ollie Ollie, you've played Ollie Ollie, this is the same type of game, but with a story in an open world. And like they can make that statement, and the game sold so much, like both the first and second, that people know what that means. And I think there's some sort of line that was crossed at some point. I'm not entirely sure when, where it doesn't necessarily matter like, oh, we have this indie game you need to check out because it's only on Switch. They can go, no, we have the biggest names in indie games on Switch, and we're debuting them here in the Nintendo like bubble. So like you probably want to be on Switch because we got all the hottest games lined up. And at that point, it doesn't even matter if they're exclusive necessarily. They're like at the forefront of the indie conversation for so many indie brands, quote unquote, now. Which I find very interesting considering they spent so long trying to just be like, no, we got our little Nindy like thing. It's our own custom little bubble over here. Now they're literally leading the conversation with so many indie games. And to your point, I mean, you even mentioned Annapurna Interactive, right? They had a whole segment in the presentation that just boiled down to like, hey, look at what Annapurna's up to. Like, you have all their games are on Switch. They're pretty great. You want more of them? Well, they're also on Switch, and they're also pretty great. And that to me, I thought it was interesting that the publisher, like an indie dev house, basically has the name recognition that could carry part of the weight of the show, whether or not it's exclusive, which I thought was kind of a little different from what we've seen on the indie scene up to this point. And for me, I was really excited about that because you kind of mentioned there's some interesting games, but I love every Annapurna game I've played, which, to be fair, has only been What Remains of Edith Finch and Sayonara Wild Hearts. So we're talking 2 games, but they're both excellent. And having a whole segment where they show these other 2 games.
Collection of that on the PS4.
Yeah, it's really slick looking. It's like a Criterion collection, yeah. And that's the thing. That's kind of my point. So PS4 is the Criterion collection of Annapurna, but Annapurna's debuting entirely new projects on the Switch broadcast. So even if it comes to the others, the association is being made up front, which I think is pretty powerful in its own right, whether or not it's actually exclusive. So like the 2 games they showed, there was one called Hindsight, which looks kind of like it follows in Edith Finch's footsteps. It's about learning about a family's past through like playable memories. That instantly piqued my interest because, the framing of it was so, it just seemed like Edith Finch in spirit, which is cool, like spiritual successor. And then they have this other game called Last Stop. And it's this game about 3 folks and how they handle sort of the supernatural incident that occurs and kind of it through each of their perspective. And again, knowing Annapurna's involved, like, would I have necessarily batted an eye at that? I don't know, but they have my attention now because their name's attached. So it's very much how, like, I don't know if you guys are the same way, but whenever A24 puts out like a movie trailer or a movie, I'm always like, oh, it's an A24 project? Oh, this gotta be good. And usually the trailers are super good, and I've yet to be disappointed by any of the movies that followed them. Like, I don't know if there's an indie studio that you guys feel the same way about, or if Annapurna and I just had that sort of special connection, but
tie A24 to anything off the top of my head.
Spring Breakers, Ex Machina, I think... What's the one with Natalie Portman going into the woods? Into the
Annihilation?
evil...
I don't think that's A24.
Annihilation is... Oh, it's just the same director, right?
Yeah, same director.
Yeah.
A24, Midsummer,
I haven't seen either of them.
Hereditary.
Oh, yeah, they did Midsummer. Yeah.
The Witch, The Lighthouse. I have an A24 shirt that I ordered on their website.
The Vivitch.
Yeah, the Vivitch.
But yeah, I don't know, like... I mean, obviously A24 is a movie studio, but... Yeah, like it's weird. I'm not used to having not even an indie studio, but just a game studio where I'm instantly like, okay, yeah, just sign me up. I have no idea what the game's about, but I'll play it. Like, obviously on some level Nintendo, but even that I feel like I'm a little more critical than Annapurna. Like, is there one for you guys? Like, I don't even know what it would be.
When it comes to an indie studio?
Yeah, or just like
not that I can think off the top of my head. I'm sure there is an indie studio that I'm like, oh man, a new game by these guys is going to be awesome. But I just literally can't think of one right now.
Yeah, I don't think I've said something like that, but I mean, I always look forward to whatever Edmund McMillan puts out, just because, I love Super Meat Boy, The End is Nigh, Binding of Isaac.
I feel like Way Forward comes close to that for you, Angel, or at least did in the indie days.
It's less Way Forward and more the franchise they decide to put out.
Right.
Like, if it's a Shantae game, I'll be excited. But even then, I haven't even played the Seven Sirens. I don't know what it was about the game or something, but it just fell into my I'll play it eventually bucket instead of my I need to play it right now. Which
right.
I feel like in the past used to be what it would be for Shantae. If anything, the only other franchise where I was like, oh, I need to get this game one was the Mighty series. Mm-hmm. Like, whether it was Mighty Flip Champs, Mighty Switch Force or Switch Force 2 or Mighty Milky Way. Like, those were all really cool. Like, if they do anything with that.
But not,
for
everyone that's unclear, not Mighty Number 9. Different studio, different quality.
Oh, yeah. But, I mean, they've put out many other games they put out The Mummy. I know it's a quality game, but I haven't bothered with it. And I know they also put out some other dinosaur shooting one and the Mega Vitamin, so, yeah.
Oh, you mean Vitamin Connection?
Switch Force.
Yeah.
Yeah, so...
Vitamin Connection, I think is actually on sale at the moment. I don't know if the sale is going to be true by the time this episode goes up. I think it's like 30% off, so...
For me, it's more franchises than anything.
Gotcha.
I can't think of anything like that, because, what we're going to talk about later, like Ace Attorney, it's like, oh, that's the one I have to automatically get.
Right.
Just because I already sent documents and, like, by law I have to.
By law, you sign documents. It's, you have a contract with Capcom.
Maybe, like, now, especially after how much I loved it, maybe Supergiant.
Supergiant
would definitely
that makes sense.
Get me into them, for sure.
Right. Like, even if they don't do a new Hades, but just something else, you're just on board from the pedigree.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah, I think honestly, the way Hades was received, I expect there to be a lot of people on that boat here. I think whatever they put out next is going to be huge. Like, it's going to skyrocket up the indie charts.
Like, Bastion was really cool, too. I didn't play much of it, but I remember that being very, very charmed by that game.
What was the other one they have? They have Bastion, they have Hades. Is it Transistor?
Yeah.
Right.
I believe that also came on Switch, no?
Yeah, they have everything on Switch right now.
No, I didn't play that one. I believe it was like one of the PS4's launch games that was for free. I'm not too sure, and I just never picked it up.
Gotcha. Well, hey, if you really love them that much, you can always go back in time. Although I'm
they also did
I'm saying you could do that. I never do that. Even with music. Like, if I like a band, I'll listen to their new stuff and everything going forward, but I rarely, go backwards. I don't know why. It's super weird. Well, but anyway.
Yeah.
I do think, to Angel, kind of back to your question. So, yeah, I think exclusives, they don't hurt, but just having the brands and having the brands be the thing that can draw people to the indie presentations and having the brands just be indies themselves, like that I think is really powerful for Nintendo. And I think the benefit of that is in many ways it elevates all the games around them, right? Like if people are tuning in to see if Hollow Knight's Silk Song's going to finally show up, which no, it's not. I don't know if anyone's noticed, but Indie World never shows the same game twice. You're never going to see it again in there. You're never going to see Sports Story again in there. It's one and done. But anyway, if they're going to tune in to see a surprise like Oxenfree 2 or Ollie Ollie World, and also props to whoever put Ollie Ollie Oxenfree in the same presentation. But anyway, they will then see these little projects, and those little projects get to kind of like mooch off the spotlight of the bigger ones. And one in particular that really seemed to take advantage of this was the Endless Runner Aerial Knight's Never Yield, which was a game that, let's be honest, I don't necessarily think would be on very many people's radars if it didn't get that profile boost in the showcase, let alone a demo after on the eShop. And that's not a knock against it, but I'm just thinking how easily this thing would get buried if it was a press release and a random YouTube trailer. Like, the odds someone will see a thumbnail or a press release about an endless side-scrolling runner and go, oh, now this I have to see, is, for better or worse, pretty slim. In the, to your point, Andrew, about the always joking about the 2D artsy platformers. I mean, it looks like a dime a dozen type of thing, but Nintendo gave the game a chance to breathe, and its developer, who goes by the name Aerial Knight, he got a chance to explain his struggle to get it made and talked about how it ties into his hometown Detroit, and it's a sort of Neo-Tokyo-esque futuristic version of Detroit, but it's still Detroit. And then to get to hear some of the game's soundtrack, and they talk about how a local Detroit native who goes by the name, at least, Danime Sama, is doing all the music. Like, that kind of human story is something they were able to use to make it more compelling for people to check this out, even though it doesn't have the brand recognition or the exclusivity or anything necessary that really is going to do it, but you're already there for the other brands and the other things. So, like, in the case of this, at least for me, it did get me kind of curious. So the first thing I did after the presentation was I went and downloaded Never Yield, the demo, and, let's see what Nintendo sees in this. Let's see how this guy, Aerial Knight, that's his online name at least, let's see how this very clear passion he has translates into an actual game. And, it is an endless runner at the end of the day, but it does have some stuff going for it. I think, first off, it's very stylish. In the same way that you would look at Runner 3 and see how it leans all the way in on, like, whimsy, this game just kind of oozes, like, coolness. A big component of it is in the soundtrack, but also the cel-shaded graphics, the way it kind of intersperses small cutscenes in between segments to tell a bit of a story, all through visuals, no dialogue. Even the way the character moves, where it's more like parkouring through, like, a cyberpunkish world, and the surveillance state and all that, and just kind of, that's more interesting than just running for the sake of running. So it gave the game kind of personality right from the start that a lot of runners maybe don't have. And then gameplay-wise, it does feel pretty familiar to those who know the genre, to be fair. Like, not to, again, compare it to Runner 3, but you're given a set of very similar moves mapped to each button. You can jump over stuff, short hop over smaller stuff, slide, dash. That last one's used to outrun enemy drones and stuff like that. And as you approach obstacles, the game kind of color codes it. So red, for example, means you jump, while yellow means you dash, and you just like kind of see the glow around the object and know what move to make. And in the demo, there are 2 speeds you can go, so to speak. If you play the regular difficulty, the game does kind of a stylish slow-mo every time you approach something that requires a move. But flip it to hard, and suddenly, the whole experience speeds up, and now it's more like following the rhythm of the music than just the on-screen cues, plus it has more obstacles added, so it feels a lot more like a challenge than the main demo, which is admittedly a little on the easy side. But the initial gameplay is promising. Like, it's a bit familiar, but it's promising. And where I think it really has the potential to shine is in, its presentation and music, which is where I get the impression Aerial Knight and his composer's passions are really going to kind of shine through. Like, I don't think the gameplay is going to be super innovative by any means, but I think they're going to make a compelling experience through the presentation and kind of what it tells, the story it tells. And the fact that I'm able to talk about this game and have these impressions and all that, again, stems from the fact that they were able to pair it with things that are actually of interest and put it in a presentation that people tune into. And now this guy who couldn't make his game happen is going to make his game happen. And Never Yield also had the advantage of being one of the few shadow drops that occurred right after the presentation, which, weirdly fitting, each of us has our eye on a different shadow drop or have been playing a different shadow drop. There are 4, and I think all 4, in some capacity, have connected with us. Like Kevin, we haven't even gotten to what you thought of the Indie World, but you have a highlight from it, right, Fez?
I wouldn't call it necessarily a highlight just because I didn't see it in the Indie World presentation because I didn't even know that had happened.
Well, okay.
And Nintendo not marketing these things out very well.
You know what else we haven't acknowledged besides you not watching Indie World? Welcome back. You vanished. We did a Power Hour without you, but now here you are again. So welcome back.
Oh yeah, I was. The Power Hour was excellent, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Was able to pass the time at work much better. But yeah, I didn't even know that Indie World happened. I remember opening up my Switch, and then all of a sudden Fez was on it, and I said, you know what? I have tried to play Fez forever. I'm pretty sure I had it like on 3 platforms already, maybe even 4. But I was like, you know what? Switch is gonna be the perfect place to play it. Yeah, so I've been playing Fez for a little bit. Maybe I'm only about 4 or 5 hours in it. But for those that don't know, because this game has been out since like 2013. Maybe a little bit later.
I think even earlier. It might be 2012. It's like 11.
2012. When did Indie Game?
It's like 11 or 9 years old or something like that. What?
When did Indie Game the movie come out?
I don't know. All I know is Fez was one of the very early Xbox 360 indie games, like Xbox Live Arcade.
Nope, it definitely wasn't.
Wasn't it?
Nope, I think you're thinking of Braid.
No, I think they both were.
Nope, because Braid had been out for years when Indie Game the movie came out, and Fez was still in development when Indie Game the movie came out.
I'm looking this up.
The movie mainly followed the Super Meat Boy one, but
I know I'm not wrong on this.
Fez originally was an Xbox exclusive when it came out, and it came out in
Yep,
and it was in 2012. I'm reading its Wikipedia. It came out on Xbox 360 April 13, 2012. Fez.
When did the Xbox 360
Phil
come
Fish,
out?
its founder and designer, was in Indie Game the movie, also in 2012. Xbox 360, to your point, came out years before that. Yeah. And Xbox Live Arcade.
2005? Oh, so 7 years. Yeah, so
yeah, okay. I was right. It was on Xbox first. I was right. It was on Xbox first. Everything else
didn't say that it was on Xbox first. You just said, "Oh, it was one of the early Xbox arcade games."
Yeah.
You're wrong on that.
Anyway, how is Fez, Kevin?
So what was I
tell me about this game.
I'll be damned if I get something wrong.
No, that was fair. That was fair. I would eat my hat if I was wearing one.
Yeah, so if you didn't see... speaking of hats, Fez.
Look
if you
at
guys
that.
didn't
That was
see...
not planned.
Yeah, there you go. So, yeah, if you didn't see Indie World like I did, and you'd have no idea what this game is about, it's a pixel art 2D puzzle side-scroller, but with an incredibly creative mechanic. So you play as this little guy named Gomez, so very fitting that I was going to like this game. And at the start of the game, it plays just like any 2D side-scroller would. And you traverse Gomez's small little village. And at the peak of this village, you receive the titular Fez, which if you don't know what a Fez is, it's like this little cap with a tassel on it. And also the best character in that 70s show. And when you receive that Fez...
It's also what the Shryers wear, if you know those little guys that ride around the little cars.
The what?
I think they're called Shryers, aren't they?
I think you're talking about the bit in The Simpsons where there's
it's not. No. That bit's based on that bit is based on reality. Yeah, the Shryers are a real thing.
Right.
What's a Shryer? I think
it's called Shryer.
I only know of
the Shryers. The Shryers where the Shryers where the hobbits live.
No, that's a
Shire.
Yes. The Shriners, not the Shryers. The Shriners.
I still don't know what you're talking about.
If you look up Shriners, it's a bunch of old white dudes in little fezzes. That's all you need to know.
Hold on, the Shriners. Now I gotta look this up. The Shriners. Oh, well, all I see is the Shriners Hospital for Children. Yeah, they're wearing little fezzes.
Yeah.
Is that what you're talking
just
about?
Completely off the rails as soon as we started going into I'm talking about. I think they
maybe it was better if I'm not on the podcast so that we won't be on any tangents.
Wait, you think this is worse structured than the Power Hour was? We, I think, went like 7 tangents deep.
It was at least fun to listen to. I don't know. Anybody was going to have a great time listening to us go off.
That's fair.
But anyways, Fez. So, you receive the Fez, and then the game does like a little reset, kind of a la, what was that one game on the GameCube that everybody loves that never got a sequel?
There's a few of them.
Eternal Darkness.
Ghost in the House?
Oh, Eternal Darkness.
Eternal Darkness.
Wait, Angel, what did you say? Ghost in the House?
Ghost in the House.
Are you thinking, I can't tell if you're thinking of Cory in the House, which is a TV show, or Geist, which is a video game.
No,
Okay,
definitely not Geist. But so when the game resets, all of a sudden you are able to shift perspective. So you have the power to rotate the perspective of the 2D plane, the 2D axis that you're on, left and right. You can't do it up and down, but that'll give you a new, I was going to say a new perspective on the world, but that'll give you a new perspective of this world that you will then use to traverse different levels. So for instance, you might be like on a short platform that you can just barely walk to the left or right of, but with a click of the shoulder button, you'll then rotate the plane and realize that that short platform is actually a very long bridge. You're simply looking at it from the front and not from the side.
Kind of reminds me of Captain Toad in how you're describing it.
Yeah, exactly. But this is just Captain Toad was like isometric, right?
Whoa! Shots fired. Captain Toad is wonderful, and how dare you do that?
But Captain Toad was isometric, right? It was never.
Yes.
You never looked at it from just like a 90-degree angle, essentially. Yeah. So
that is true. Yeah.
Yeah. Just like Captain Toad, this world is technically 3D because, like, at the beginning of the game, when you are just going up and down the village, you wake up in bed and you go outside and you get like this panning shot of the village, and then when the game resets, you have like this 3D panning shot of the village where you see like every angle of the village, essentially, minus the top and bottom, like I mentioned earlier. And so using this mechanic, you'll be shifting constantly to get to like higher grounds, to just get to another side of an area. It's kind of wild. So like, and it's also very paradoxical. Like at one point, you'll have to get to an objective, which is right above you on a platform, right? But, and the way that you get up there is like, there will be 3 platforms off to your left and right that you can jump on and to the right to get to higher ground. And so you'll just go like up and to the right, up and to the right, up and to the right. And so now you're on even level with that platform that has the objective on it. But now you're too far away to make the jump to get on there. So you'll just switch the perspective. And all of a sudden you realize that last platform that you're on is actually connected to the platform that you need to get on. It's very hard to explain. A quick little video on YouTube will make this make more sense than what I'm saying right now. And I didn't really talk about the objectives. Like, you are collecting these little cubes that are scattered across the levels, and when you collect 8 of them, they form a very big cube that will then unlock new areas for you to explore. As someone who has like bemoaned the trend of pixel art games in the more recent years, and the way that Angel was making it sound earlier with like all these indie 2D games, this one is definitely an exception because of how like incredibly charming its visuals and level art is. Like the level design is full of little touches where they add like actual depth to the 2D surfaces, making it look 3D instead of going the route of faking that depth by making, some pixels a little bit darker, a little bit lighter. No, they're actual 3D objects, which I think is incredible. And you kind of see this in Indie Game the Movie when you see them designing like each block. They're all like handcrafted. It's pretty amazing. The music for the game is very, very soothing. It's one game where I talked about it when we were talking about it, Monster Hunter, where I never play the games with sound on, and I always play the game with the sound on when I'm playing Fez because it's just so calming. And calm is like the perfect word to describe this game because like there are no enemies. There are hazards that you do have to get around. But like even if you do die to one of these hazards, you like immediately revive. You immediately respawn. And there is no life system. So what I like to do with this game is, like, right before I go to bed, I will load up Fez and play a level or two. And it's just so peaceful and, like, it puts me in a good mood right before I go to bed, which is great. If there is one thing that, like, I didn't like, it's the fact that you can get lost pretty easily, especially during the beginning when you kind of have to figure out your bearings and you're still, like, messing with, you know, the shifting mechanic. Because there will be doors, like, you know, against the house. And, like, when you go into it, you're in a house. But then later levels will just have these random doors that will transport you to other levels. And it's very easy to just keep going through doors and just be maybe 4 or like 5 levels away from the level that you were originally in that you still haven't completed. But, like, aside from that,
I'm just picturing like Monsters Inc. basically, the ending of Monsters Inc. But
that's actually not a bad way to look at it. Now that I think about it,
good job, Jason.
Thanks. I worked hard on that one, on the fly.
Yeah, but I'm having a lot of fun with it. You definitely check it out. It got its sequel canceled because Phil Fish was like run off Twitter.
Yep.
So
which makes me wonder, like, who's behind this one? Like, what company is he still involved? Like, there's so many questions, but
no. Crap. Whatever happened to this thing? Because the company, it's
I'm kind of wondering why it's here. Like,
well, it's just like an opportunity. I mean, there's so many older indie games that are just showing up. Like, yeah.
Well, this is made by a small team, but they did have a publisher.
Polytron or something, right?
Polytron, yeah. I think Polytron was just, you know, doing the publishing side of it, of course.
Makes sense.
Yeah, so it's just a publisher thing.
Right.
Yeah, that's Fez for now, I guess.
Nice, yeah, and it's, for anyone wondering, it is $15 on the eShop. So it's right up there with the price it probably had 11 years ago, but it sounds like it's worth it based on what you're saying.
Yeah, it's super fun.
And
it doesn't age, so
yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's the Nintendo philosophy. You can keep selling it at the same price, doesn't matter. Which brings us to the next Shadow Drop that happened. It's kind of funny because Kevin, you got a game that Shadow Drop, but didn't know it came, but didn't like watch Indie World. Meanwhile, Angel, you watched Indie World, but have a game that Shadow Drop that you haven't bought yet, but are looking at, right? Like the longing, right?
Yeah, I mean, of all the games, that one definitely caught my eye the most. I mean, it definitely falls into the artsy 2D category, but the gameplay mechanic, or I guess it's like the whole point of the game, I guess, is to wait, which that's why, like, I guess it's kind of why, like, I haven't gotten it yet. Like, I haven't really decided if it's something I really want to play. I'm just very intrigued by its premise. Mm-hmm. Because the idea that you're supposed to wait, how many days is it? Like, over 400 real-time days?
I think it's 400 days, yeah.
Yeah, so 400 real-time days. And you could spend those days, you know, actually playing the game, solving its puzzles, just interacting with it. Or you could literally just wait 400 days later and see what happens. And I don't know, it just seemed interesting. It was like, I don't think I've ever heard of a game doing that. It almost made me curious, like, what is at the end of these 400 days that they feel like is going to be worth the wait? Because, you know, you run into that problem where this thing, New Super Mario Bros. 2, or like, grab 1,000,000 coins and see what happens. Oh my god, what are they going to be? 1,000,000 coins? That's such a big task. Oh, you get a Mario statue on your title screen. It's like, oh, I get the same thrill from just seeing what it looks like on YouTube. But
which means zero thrill,
yeah,
right?
Yeah, if it was difficult to do, then yeah, I'd probably do that. You know, it's like little badge of honor. It's like no different than getting the black flag in New Super Mario Bros. U for being 100%ing the whole thing or whatever. But this one, it's like, I don't know what it is, and I kind of don't want to spoil that for myself in case I ever do feel like going through it. Because that's literally like a year and a month about. Like, it's not going to be something that happens soon. And obviously, like, time traveling is going to probably deflate, I guess, that feeling as well. But I don't know.
Well, it's funny because when they first said, "Oh, it takes 400 real days for like whatever the King Awakening means. It takes 400 real days for the King to awaken." So for the game to end, as you're saying, I remember initially thinking, watching the presentation, like that's crazy, like 400 days playing the same game, and then I realized that's literally been the pandemic. So basically, it's a whole nother pandemic's length of time, which people have been playing stuff every day for 400 days. Animal Crossing comes to mind. So maybe it's not so crazy of an idea. It might have more to it than
yeah. And plus, you don't have to play it every day. So
yeah. But it is interesting how the game, like from what I saw in the footage, it seems like it's really kind of like it's not Animal Crossing. I mean, I think it's a point and click adventure, but it's much more. It's very laid back in a similar way. Like you can like go explore. I think they have like a bunch of classic, like legit, like real classic public domain literature, like Moby Dick, that like I don't know if you can read or the character can read or what, but there's like all these books you can read to keep yourself occupied. Like it's interesting how the whole game is a very sort of laid back, but in a very different way from Animal Crossing type of laid back experience.
Yeah.
So I'd be curious if you end up getting it, what you think of it in 400 days when it's over.
Yeah, we'll see if I end up getting it, but at the very least, I thought it was just the most unique looking one, at least just from a gameplay perspective.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Because the other ones are either narrative-driven stories, which Annapurna, even if they are very high quality, I feel like they're a very, like, if it's an indie game, it's either going to be that kind of game or I don't even know what else to think of off the top of my head, like some kind of platformer.
I will slightly challenge your most unique game comment with the Shadow Drop that I checked out, which is sort of a Venn diagram of your guys' two games, because it's a port of a release from other platforms, in this case PC and mobile, and it too, like The Longing, is a point-and-click game, kind of. There is no game, Wrong Dimension. And
that one is pretty unique.
Yeah.
But only because I've already seen that game before. It was like, it's just a Switch port of this game kids play on the computer.
Which it totally is. But yeah, this one, I thought it was really cool. It's a bit tricky to talk about because the mechanics and the concepts of the game are quite literally the story of the game. So there may be some light spoilers here, but I'm going to do my best to not say too much about any individual, I can't even talk, puzzle or concept, just at the highest level. Like, this is a game about games. It parodies other games and genres. It parodies their mechanics, the platforms they're on, really the framework of how they're built and how you interact with them. And even though it was only in the showcase for like 30 seconds maybe, there was enough of that theme that just instantly caught my attention. It gave me almost a WarioWare type vibe, contrary to it being billed as a point-and-click adventure. And once I finally got it and downloaded it and first booted it up, it did actually really feel like WarioWare. You're engaging and basically breaking title screens and menus. You're just interacting them with a simple touch in handheld mode, or if you're playing on the TV, or with the Joy-Cons, with an on-screen pointer. It's in the same sort of way that WarioWare has you only have one core action and sort of unravel it into so many different ways to interact. Like right off the bat, you take the exclamation mark of the tile logo, use its dot to play Brick Breaker with the logo, and then you pretty much destroy the entire tile screen through Brick Breaker, all using the point and click just touch things interface. You just touch and drag the exclamation mark. And generally speaking, I am kind of a total sucker for this idea of like a single simple input being used in wildly different ways. I think in many ways, I don't know if this is a hot take, but to me, it feels like one of the most creative types of game. Like, I love how What the Golf was able to take, the swing meter of a golfing game and build so much wackiness and unexpected gameplay around it. Or to a lesser extent, a few years prior, Pool Panic did something similar, where the idea of hitting a cue ball was built down to a full adventure game where that dynamic of hitting the cue ball could be used in so many different ways to interact with the world. So, like here, the corner action is really what amounts to an inventory-based point-and-click adventure. All you're doing is touching stuff to interact with it, and through those interactions, you're acquiring items to then use to solve puzzles. But the items aren't, like, normal items. Like at one point you're maybe playing a LucasArts-style point-and-click adventure, and your on-screen menu items end up being the items you use to take apart the backdrop of the game world to advance yourself. Or you're in another chapter and there's like kind of a mobile game ad pop up, and it's the object in the ad that's actually what you need to solve the puzzle behind the ad in the actual game world. And that's the sort of like out of the box kind of approach they take with There Is No Game. Like literally anything that the game puts on screen is fair game for its gameplay. So you need to think past the usual convention of like what is UI versus what's in game. It's more about manipulating kind of the framework of how everything's presented and the framework of each genre and its tropes, and then just kind of making it fit, like making things work that shouldn't work, making things sort of forcing things in ways that, in a normal game wouldn't be impossible. And what's interesting is even at times they will have normal, regular, traditional gameplay of those genres, but you're playing them through the point-and-click interface, which is actually kind of cool. And what's really cool about it is that the developers are constantly playing with what all these interactions can mean. So again, without spoiling too much, like each chapter of the game toys with the idea of breaking the game in a different way. So the LucasArts themed chapter I mentioned, that's probably the most traditional point-and-click approach, fittingly, since that's their genre. And that's mostly focusing on moving objects around. Then the next chapter, which is kind of a Zelda riff with some very specific references, that tends to toy more with the idea of manipulating objects that are in the game world. And the one after that dives into like free-to-play and clicker games and has the point-and-click interface actually be used straight up as a clicker game interface. And the creativity really just kind of keeps you on your toes. But again, I think what works so well is that it all builds on the same control mechanism of a point-and-click game. You touch something, you interact with it. Maybe you then get an item out of it for your inventory, which you then can touch and put on something else to use in some other way. It's just kind of that sort of pattern. And they just do some really wild stuff with it, which is really cool. And what ties it all together is this narrative in which you, as the user, are just trying to get into a game that insists it's not a game. The game literally speaks directly to you, fully voiced, about how it's not really a game and you should just go away. But pretty soon things take a weird turn and you're introduced to a glitch that is infecting all sorts of programs on the system and ends up sucking you and the game that's not a game into this kind of wormhole of different experiences that are also glitching out. That's all I really say about the plot in terms of details, but it has a lot of layers to it. There's actually kind of a meta-narrative about the actual development of There Is No Game, which, from my understanding, started as a Flash game, then had a crowdsourcing campaign that didn't work out, and then found some other way to get funding. But anyway, there's a few layers.
You got all
to the
that
story.
from that?
What?
You got all of that from playing it? That's pretty cool.
Well, they make a couple comments, and then I was like, so I looked it up. But for the most part, like it all like combines, like the story elements, the gameplay elements, it all works really well. It's definitely a comedy. A lot of the jokes aren't like laugh out loud hilarious, but I did like chuckle at a good number of them. And there's a lot of gaming references. Like basically, the gif like Captain America saying like, I understood that reference. That was me for the entire playthrough. Like everything, like, oh, that's that reference, and oh, that's that, and that's that.
Oh man, I could totally see you doing that out loud too.
No, what do you think? I sit alone with my Switch, just sitting on the couch in handheld, just being like, I understood that reference every 5 seconds.
100% yes.
Yeah, actually, I probably did that a couple times. You're probably right. But anyway, I will admit that as you get into the later parts of the game, it isn't quite as creative as the earlier parts because, there's a lot they do with point and click, but also there's always so much you can do with point and click. And because it's a 2D-driven experience, a lot of the more modern game industry stuff is, can't be commented on in a direct way. It's also been on the shorter side. It took me, about 5 hours to make it through the whole thing. But I can actually see now I think about it, some people, even though, it is a little on the shorter side, getting a little frustrated that kind of tries to speed you through things. Like it's a little heavy-handed with its puzzles, and that the narrator, the game that claims it's not a game, is constantly talking about what you need to try to do. He doesn't ever outright say it, but he doesn't give many puzzles much room to breathe either. So even though there is an actually really good hint system that does a good job, if you want help, of nudging you in the right direction, the narrator, like, it's like 10 seconds. He's like, oh, what about, you need to try something like this. And it's like, okay. So that, for some people, may actually speed up the experience even more. That already is kind of quick. And also, like any point and click, it's worth knowing that not all puzzles are equal here. Some are very quick to figure out. Some require some stretches of logic or some much more out-of-the-box thinking. But for the most part, like, There Is No Game is a very clever, fun experience. And even though it does lean on so many existing tropes and ideas from gaming, the way it brings it all together, the way it kind of toys with what I've been makes a point-and-click adventure a point-and-click adventure, like, it definitely stands out as a pretty unique experience. It's $13 on the eShop. If it sounds up your alley, I recommend it. I don't think if you don't like point-and-clicks whatsoever or some sort of, narrative-driven, more linear experience, you're going to immediately gravitate to this. But if those are in your wheelhouse, then yeah, this is a really cool experience that I would recommend. What's also nice about it, though, for me, is that it kind of reminded me that point-and-clicks as a genre check many of the boxes of what I've been looking for since playing Edith Finch. Like I've said a few times on the show, that I have had, I don't know what to call it, like almost like a spiritual awakening of sorts about this idea of like more narrative driven yet still interactive yet kind of linear experiences. So like the new thing I really like the new genre. And it turns out, much to my stupidity, it's not new at all. Like point-and-click games have always been that. So it was kind of fitting that as I was playing There Is No Game and having my little mini yet obvious epiphany, in comes Capcom announcing a game you already name dropped earlier in the show, Angel, which is, a brand new entry in their point-and-click series, or at least new to the West, The Great Ace Attorney Chronicles.
It's definitely not new.
Yeah, it's actually like five.
Unfortunate.
I think it's like 5 years old, right? Like, because it was out in Japan and like on the DS.
Mm-hmm. No, 3DS.
Or 3DS. Sure. Yeah. But yeah, it's so this new one, Great Ace Attorney Chronicles, compilation of both the original Phoenix Wright spin-off and its sequel that somehow never made it out of Japan. And I mean, that I was kind of like, oh, look at that. But I imagine that must have made your week, Angel. I mean, that is your franchise right there.
Yeah, it's it always kind of made sense why it took them so long to bring it over, or if they were going to bring it over at all. Just because of the kind of writing dilemma I guess they had put themselves in. Because Ace Attorney, takes place in, I guess, here in the West, it takes place in Los Angeles or, Japangeles or whatever. Because, here, like, any reference to Japan or Tokyo is gone. Like, we're in LA here. And, in Japan, it obviously takes place in Japan. And the Great Ace Attorney follows, like, Phoenix Wright's, like, great, like, ancestor. So, they were apparently defense attorneys as well. And I guess they were kind of like, do we just suddenly say that, like, Phoenix, I guess, his ancestors immigrated from Japan or something? Like, not that there was anything wrong with that, but I guess they probably wanted to find just a nice way to localize it. And I guess it finally happened.
Do you think that's what held it back, or do you think there were concerns about other things, or if it would step on the toes of Leighton versus Phoenix, which also is partly set in Britain, or
definitely
like
not.
Okay.
I mean, if there was anything else, it's probably just like, because like they went out of their way to get rid of, like, to just try to make it as like USA friendly as possible, for lack of a better term.
True.
And because this game like takes place in like rural Japan, and it's all about like that time period, I guess like they were probably thinking like, oh, like this just might not gel with U.S. audiences, so they just just never bothered
that's so weird.
Translating it.
It's such a archaic mindset these days. Like I feel like that's a mindset like the 90s,
Yeah,
like
I
the
feel
idea
like
it's too foreign
back in the day. Like like Nintendo not bringing over like Captain N, like some games that we might think are too weird.
Yeah.
Or we may not like them. And Ace Attorney as a franchise has already been like not in the forefront of Capcom. Like, I mean, to give you an example, like Ace Attorney 4, Apollo Justice, like that one, we got it released here in the US, but for the most part, Japan gets like nice collector's editions with statues, big boxes, soundtracks, like everything.
Right.
And then when we got Ace Attorney 5, Dual Destinies, same thing. They got a collector's edition over there, nice boxes, everything. It was just a digital download here. And that was it.
It's definitely more niche in the West, that's for sure.
Yeah, and same thing with Ace Attorney 6, Spirit of Justice. We also just got a digital download for that, nothing else. And they got the whole shebang. And after that, we pretty much just got nothing for a while. That was pretty much like the end of Ace Attorney here in the US, because that's where, I guess, Phoenix's story F left off. And then they just started going into the ancestor stuff, where they met, I guess, over there in Japan.
To be fair to Capcom,
it was actually Sherlock Holmes.
They did re-release 1, 2, and 3 like 7 times over between 6 and now.
Oh yeah, Nauseam. Yeah, they brought it over. They pretty much ported it to everything. If it can turn on, it will have Ace Attorney.
In fact, they ported it to Great Ace Attorney Chronicles. So there's going to be a version of the game called Turnabout Edition where you get 1, 2, and 3 and Great Ace Attorney Chronicles in the same package for $60. So they're even pouring it to another version of the same franchise.
That seems like a great deal.
It actually is a super good deal because that's a ton of content at a very cheap price.
Yeah.
It's just weird that it doesn't. Well, actually, no, it's fine. I just kind of wish like those bundles like also included like Ace Attorney 4. I mean, or maybe they could just do another or
something. Yeah, it's. Well, but I mean, it's hard to complain when they're giving you the equivalent. Of,
it's fine.
25 chapters of story.
I mean, Greatest Attorney is it's a prequel, and even then, it's like so far removed chronologically from the main series, from the other games that they could easily stand on their own. But yeah, I mean, I would like to see like 4, 5, and 6 put in their own bundle. I mean, I don't even know if I'm gonna get. I mean, I got 1, 2, and 3 again on my iPad. I have it on the Wii and on DS. I have it twice on DS because I have like one in their cases unopened, and then I also have just the cartridges alone.
So you're
that was also, like, the only way they would have find them.
You're the one that keeps quadruple dipping. Oh, makes sense.
But now that we're actually getting a physical release of this one,
I've
like,
bought Kingdom Hearts 1 like 5 times already.
But you have like a serious Kingdom Hearts problem in general. I guess Angels is the same with Ace Attorney.
It was a little different. Like they had a reason. Like because when I first played Ace Attorney, it was just a game I saw for a discount on GameStop. It was used, so it was just a cartridge. And at the time, Capcom had forgotten Ace Attorney existed, so finding these games were really hard. I was literally only able to find them in just the cartridge. Mm-hmm. And eventually, they ported them to the Wii, and that's how I got my. Oh, and then I played most of them that way because by that point I still couldn't find 1, 2, and 3 on a cartridge. But my brother wanted to play them on a cartridge because he wanted to play them in their original form. He refused to play them on the Wii, so I decided to hunt him down. And I eventually got him to play all 3 of them on a cartridge. And then they eventually, I guess, suddenly decided, hey, let's just start reviving this franchise. And they re-released all the games in brand new boxes. And, well, I mean, it's the same box, just a re-release. But that was awesome because now I got to have a nice, squeaky clean version of them.
If it makes you feel better when you're doing the hunt, when they first released Phoenix Wright, it was near impossible to find too. I remember like there was all this buzz on like game forums like this game's actually pretty good, and the only place I ever saw it was when I was on a trip to New York, and I went to Nintendo World, now Nintendo New York, and I bought it there because it's the only place. This is when I was in LA, only place I ever saw it, ever.
Well, I actually remember holding one in my hands at a GameStop like around the time it came out. That and Trauma Center. But I remember dropping them just because I'm like, I don't want to play as a lawyer. That doesn't sound great. But like over 10 years later, I'd rediscover it and end up falling in love with it. Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. But the point is, Greatest Attorney. Always wanted to play it, obviously, because any of the Ace Attorney games are just really fun. And this one just seemed quirky. I mean, it has Sherlock Holmes. At least in Japan, he was known as Sherlock Holmes.
No, it has Sherlock Holmes.
Flip the F. Well, yeah, in this version.
You know the backstory of why they did that, right? It's actually kind of interesting. So
isn't Sherlock Holmes like something they can't use here?
So kind of. So what happened is
it's like a legal thing.
As a generic character, Sherlock Holmes is public domain. But the estate of an author that wrote some Sherlock Holmes stories evolved his character to have certain emotional traits because he came back from war and did this other stuff. And then Netflix made a movie about Sherlock Holmes' little sister, Nola Holmes, starring Millie Bobby Brown last summer. And then the estate was like, oh, no, that Sherlock has too many emotions. We're going to sue you because it's too much like our Sherlock because he's emotional. So they sued them. They ended up dropping the lawsuit. Supposedly they settled out of court, maybe. But point is, I think Capcom's now just really like, oh, if we show any emotion in our Sherlock Holmes, they're going to for sure come after us unless we call him that. And that's why he's Sherlock Holmes. And in 2023, that author's estate loses all the public domain. You know, it's all public domain at that point, and Sherlock Holmes can be emotional again. But for now, for a couple years, for legal, because they're scared of getting sued, people are avoiding using the name Sherlock Holmes, which is really odd.
Yeah, I remember that. Like, I had to do like a double take because I remember, like, for kind of sort of keeping up with the original games as they came out, just to kind of like get a feel for the premise.
Yeah,
and just seeing like, oh, it's Sherlock Holmes and Watson, and then over here it's like, wait, like I had to like read it twice. Wait, it's not Sherlock Holmes.
It's Sherlock Holmes.
It just reminds me of World of Warcraft. Well, at least Hearthstone does this, where they have a character called Harrison Jones instead of Harrison.
Right.
And then instead of what's that one woman with the Chihuahua, Paris Hilton.
Mm-hmm.
They have a character named Harris Pilton.
I unironically love the fact that some games can be self-aware enough to do something like Sherlock Holmes or Harris Pilton or whatever you said. Like, it just, like, at least it gets an Ace Attorney. At least it reminded me, because I haven't played since the original Ace Attorney, like how funny and self-aware the games are. Like, it's...
Oh, man, the pun names.
Yeah, like, I completely forgot about that. Like, I enjoyed the first Ace Attorney. I sort of left the series behind for reasons I can't figure out. And then, I was getting back into the point and clicks.
Personal traumatic reasons.
I know, very, very personal. But, yeah, and I saw Sherlock Holmes, I'm like, I'm buying this. Like, literally, that's what sold me on it. So... but anyway, sorry, you're saying something else about Herlock, and I interjected.
Yeah, but in general, you can expect the same kind of courtroom battles. If anything, it looks like this one is taking a page from Layden versus Phoenix, where it looks like you have like multiple people you have to testify against at the same time.
Oh, the whole jury thing, yeah.
But
yeah.
That
actually looks kind of cool, because you have to sort of poke holes in each juror's logic, right, and then sort of get them to all agree. Like, if one says one thing, you have to prove why the other one's right and they're wrong, or vice versa. It's like
get layers. Them to disagree or stuff like that. Yeah, it's interesting. And, I've yet to be disappointed by an Ace Attorney game or any of the games in the franchise. I just kind of hope this is a sign that maybe we'll get, like, a shadow drop, even if it's just a loose, like, localization of the Miles Edgeworth Ace Attorney Investigations 2, because we never got that sequel. If we got that, then we'd literally get... Like, we'd be up to speed as far as all the games go. But I do hope this does well so that we can get, a part 7 or something. Because I do love the story and I do like where it ended. But, I'm always down for more.
You may be on to
7
something.
games, 6, 7, 8. We're 8 games in. 10 if you count the spin-off with Edgeworth. That's a lot of games in a franchise that I guess they could end it. But, they could also just go on with Apollo. He's, like, still very young. Keep going, but I don't know.
You may be onto something with the fan service, like doing investigations just to keep the fans happy. Because like one of the things I thought was interesting about this is they could have easily just slapped the 2 games in and called it Chronicles and called it a day, the original and the sequel. But they're adding everything else that was released in relation to those games in Japan. So there's previously downloadable content. There's, I think, 8 mini episodes they're throwing in. There's videos. There's 13 clips from some special thing they did that wasn't even a game. It's called like 7 Days of Sin or something. There's alternate costumes. There's an art gallery. There's all this extra stuff that they really seem to be like, yeah, sorry guys, we took a long time. Here, let's make it up to you. And if they're feeling that way about the fans... There's even that
mode that's like... There's even the Jason mode where you don't have to like play the game. You could just sit back and watch the story, basically.
That, honestly, along with Herlock, when I saw that in the trailer... That's what sort of set the light bulb off of like, oh yeah, Ace Attorney. That's the actually kind of thing I was looking for. Because not that I want to have it play itself, but the fact that the game is linear enough that it can play itself is straight up like kind of the thing that Edith Finch was, or that Sayonara Wild Hearts is, or what have you. So it was like right there, and I was like, yeah, that makes sense. So that sold me on it, even though I don't plan to do it as well as Herlock. But Kevin, were you ever into Ace Attorney?
Definitely looking forward to it.
No, I'd never played an Ace Attorney game before. I will say there's one thing about that series that pissed me off, and it had to do with the North American cover art. It might be also for what's the other regions that it's like North America, PAL,
yeah, PAL, all the European ones, Europe.
Yeah, the cover art for the first 3 Ace Attorney games, I believe Phoenix Wright is in big letters, and then Ace Attorney is small. But when Apollo Justice came out, they flipped it. That boils my blood like nobody else. You guys know how much I hate inconsistency with this kind of things.
I know we talked about before. I'm the same way with game spines. It drives me crazy when a third party is like, you know what? every other spine on the Switch or the Wii, like they just put the plain text for the logo. We're going to put a big snazzy one that's all like embossed. I'm like, no, that breaks the spines. Even though you're keeping the color, it breaks the spine. Do not do that. So that's way more.
It makes it funny better. I mean, Phoenix Wright was only big for the first one. The second and third one had Ace Attorney in big letters and Phoenix Wright all tiny. Like after that, they were all just Ace Attorney, basically.
Oh, okay. I mean,
yeah. Nonetheless,
I mean, that still doesn't exceed it, but it makes it a little better.
That's
just one game that did it.
At least they just course corrected sooner, or made it worse sooner, depending on how you look at it.
Made it worse.
I mean, Ace Attorney makes more sense as because I mean, not all of them like star Phoenix Wright. I mean, especially with Apollo, like he's definitely the main character.
Oh yeah.
And especially this one, I mean, yeah.
Don't get me wrong. Yeah, Ace Attorney should have been front and center from the beginning, but
Oh yeah, that's definitely a really weird oversight. Plus, you have they should have done that.
Well, live and learn, Capcom. But that actually, Ace Attorney wasn't the only game that caught your eye, right, Angel? I know you're chomping at the bit to cover this one, so that rhetorical question was extra rhetorical. Please, talk to us about Hot Wheels Unleashed.
There isn't much to say because all I have to go by is just like a 3-minute trailer that I saw. But man, if that 3-minute trailer didn't or maybe it was less,
it's
it didn't grab my attention so much. Yeah. So, I don't know. Just by looking at the trailer, you can see that the driving feels very tight. It's pretty much it's a normal racing game, but there wasn't any emphasis put on items, if any. I don't think there were any. It looks almost like a mixture between it looks like it feels somewhere between F-Zero and Sonic and Astro's Racing Transformed. Just the way the drifting look, the way the boosts are placed, the way the tracks are very simplistic. It just looks like it's pure competitive arcadey racing. And it just looks really, really fun. And visually, I don't know why, but I've always loved just that small world aesthetic. I mean, I remember playing a lot of that Micro Machines game on Game Boy Color. And this just kind of reminds me of a big 3D version of that with, another, I guess, licensed vehicle, toy licensed vehicle, whatever. And I don't know. I mean, I've just been really, I don't know. I really want another racing game. I really wish, like I mentioned, Sonic also Transformed was ported to the Switch in some way. Because Sonic Racing didn't exactly scratch that itch. So we're still kind of just stuck with Mario Kart. And yesterday, I even had the chance to play a lot of F-Zero GX, which was really, really fun to go back to. That's definitely one game that aged really well. My nostalgia goggles for it were well founded. It still is just as fun and just as cool as I remembered. And this Hot Wheels game just kind of feels like it emanates that same kind of energy. Just the kind of split second racing, the close calls. I don't know. It just looks great. I will most likely be getting it on the Switch. I know it comes out in September, still a while from now.
Yeah, September 30th.
But it definitely looks like a game that would definitely benefit just from being played on the PS4, PS5. But on the Switch, I will have more people I could play against. Unless it's cross-play, then I'll definitely get it on something else.
It could be. They're putting a lot of effort into this thing.
If Mario Kart just isn't cutting it for you anymore and you have just another racer you want to play, it's definitely worth checking out at least. I mean, Hot Wheels of all places. I wouldn't have guessed. I mean, we were so desperate for a racing game that we were even eyeing the Cars game. But,
oh yeah, Cars 3. Yeah.
We didn't pull the trigger, but yeah, that's how bad I got. So I'm glad this one at least looks quality. Yeah, it doesn't. Yeah, it doesn't look like a cash grab. It looks like there's some actual passion going into this, which is kind of crazy.
Yeah, I watched the trailer. You very early, right after we recorded our last episode, guys, Hot Wheels. I'm gonna talk about Hot Wheels. So I made sure to do some research and look at Hot Wheels. I was really surprised at how much the foundation looks for a good arcade racer in here. The weight of the cars, the drift mechanic. The footage I saw didn't show very many obstacles.
I mean, it's pretty much
the boost meter. But yeah, they didn't really show obstacles or environmental hazards or even forking roads in the trailer, but I imagine it's going to be in the final game. But yeah, the fact that it's 12 people online, the fact that it's going to have a track editor where you can actually like build your own Hot Wheel track. Like they are putting a lot,
which is
of
very
effort
much
into
Hot
this.
Wheels. But
Yeah. There's also got a livery
cool.
editor where you can actually customize your Hot Wheels look, which could be very fun and very dangerous for online play. But yeah, there's like a lot here that I'm really surprised. This is not a typical cash grab type of game from the looks of it.
Yeah. Well, definitely, that's a game that I know for sure I'll definitely be buying and talking about here.
And we look
maybe
forward to
we'll
it.
convince Jason to get it just so that we can do multiplayer.
I'm down. I mean, I'm sure. I'll commit to it right now. Unless the game gets like a 3 out of 10 from reviewers, I'm down.
If it gets review bombed, I mean, rightfully so, then yeah, maybe we'll reconsider. But
as it stands, yes. Kevin, you should get it too. We'll have a Hot Wheel party. It'll be great.
I'm up for it. I'm looking at some gameplay right now.
Right? Like it looks surprisingly solid.
Yeah. Honestly, this wasn't what I was expecting, but it's actually way more creative than what I was expecting. I was expecting because I played Hot Wheels World Race on the PS2, and that was it was basically like just a standard racer. But this is you're actually playing as little Hot Wheels, so
I'm going to be honest. I did not think at any point in this Hot Wheel conversation there would be one of us saying, well, I've played the past Hot Wheel games, and let me tell you, like I did not see that coming. But yeah, this one looks...
Yeah, because Hot Wheel World Race looks, like you said, it looks like you're just playing as like a normal looking car. But it's cool that these are like actual little tiny Hot Wheels toys that exist in real life too. But yeah.
And I think one thing that helps is the developer knows what they're doing. They hired the people that do, I forgot the name of the studio, but they hired the people that do MotoGP, like the motorcycle racing game. So they cut their teeth on real quote unquote racing. So yeah, I could see this has some potential for sure. But yeah, while we're on the topic of things people want to talk about, we actually had a request for a topic of something to talk about. One of our listeners, Kurt, asked us for our takes on this fresh wave of rumors involving some sort of partnership between Microsoft and Nintendo. And the idea of Microsoft doing something with Nintendo.
Kurt.
Yeah, thanks, Kurt. But the idea of Microsoft doing something with Nintendo isn't new per se. And, we've seen them work together with Minecraft, crossplay, Cuphead and Ori on Switch, Banjo-Kazooie and Smash Bros. As weird as it is to see copyright Microsoft on the bottom of my Banjo-Kazooie amiibo, because yes, that's the first amiibo I bought in forever, but I did buy it. It's kind of become the reality of the relationship between these companies, right? Like they have some sort of friendly thing going on. But there seems to be something more brewing, as Kurt noted to us, and it's all thanks to a shelf. Have you guys been following the shelf saga at all?
The what?
The shelf saga.
I guess not.
All right.
I'm assuming Phil Spencer has something in the background of the shelf, and that
Good
seems
job.
to imply that more big things are supposed to happen. Because he had the Xbox Series S on the shelf like months before it released.
Yeah. And I can't believe no one noticed it. That's the crazy thing. Yeah, so
or like months before it was revealed.
Yeah, which is insane that no one went, what's that weird cube back there? What's that weird rectangle with a circle? But hey. But yeah, now it's a known thing that when there's something on the shelf, you pay attention. And further pushing for that is VentureBeat has journalist named Jeff Grubb, who's really, a well-connected guy. He knows things he doesn't know. He knows insiders. He's saying in the most recent video that Phil Spencer has done, everything on the shelf was a hint. And there's hints to like stuff from Kojima. There's a Switch. There's all sorts of stuff. And sure enough, yeah, there was that Switch. So it could mean a few things, right? Like maybe a first-party Xbox game is being ported to Switch. Something like, Rare Replay would make sense. Or maybe Microsoft's going to give another character a Smash. Like Master Chief is in Fortnite, so why not in Smash? Maybe they're doing a Banjo-Kazooie remaster for Switch in partnership with Nintendo. Like, do any of those sound plausible or interesting to you guys if they were to do any of those?
I mean, definitely anything Banjo-Kazooie related.
Yeah, that's the one I'm gunning for as a remake.
That's
Give it to me now.
Only one that. Yeah, that's the only one that seems plausible. I know there's those rumors of xCloud,
which is not an original Xbox property, but
yeah, isn't it weird how it comes full circle like that? But yeah, and so xCloud, yeah, that sounds. You would think that's not plausible, but it's suddenly becoming more plausible by the day, which is so bizarre. It it seems like, you know, if they do Banjo on Smash, or if they do Master Chief in Smash, Banjo on Switch or Master Chief in Smash, there we go. It seems like it's part of a bigger picture. And I say that because it's no longer just Phil Spencer who has a Switch on his shelf. The Switch has now popped up on a different shelf behind a different employee in a different Microsoft video, and that video very specifically was for an event about Microsoft's GameStack. And GameStack is Microsoft's dev tool and resource library for building Xbox games. It does include some stuff that's already Switch-friendly. The Havok physics engine, which is used by like Breath of the Wild and it used to be used by Smash Bros. That is also part of the game stack. But the bulk of the game stack is Microsoft's Azure Cloud. It's Xbox services for getting your games onto Xbox. So to your point, Kevin, that like there's those rumors of xCloud on Switch, I mean, they're kind of signaling there might be some sort of Game Pass xCloud on Switch. Like they put the Switch in the video about dev tools for Xbox. Or
hear me out.
Uh-huh.
People, considering the sales of the Switch, these people just own Switches and it's just in the background.
Oh, but this wasn't someone's house. This was a stage like set. All it had was an Xbox X, and then a Switch above it on a different shelf, and it was all backlit green.
Okay.
Otherwise, you'd be right. And I think people would be reading too much into it. But it was like a very like professionally produced like studio video. And the idea of Game Pass on Switch is admittedly not new. I dug through our archives after Kurt sent us the question, and we actually first talked about it 2 years ago in episode 191. And what's funny is like looking back at that or listening back to it, it's like such a big focus of our conversation was, would Microsoft do it? Like, does it make sense for Microsoft? Because, you know, this was when Cuphead and Ori for Switch were just rumors. They weren't official yet. This was before Game Pass was actually a readily available service for anyone. And it was, perhaps most notably, before Microsoft really demonstrated just how platform agnostic they're willing to be. Like, they weren't yet going to the lengths of building a browser-based version of xCloud just to be able to get Game Pass on Apple devices, for example. Like, that wasn't even there yet. So I think, in my mind at least, the question of whether or not Microsoft would bring Xbox's Game Pass to other competing platforms, I feel like that's a yes at this point. Like, they would be open to it. Their game plan is very clearly to just expose the service to as many people as possible and build up the subscriber base however they can. And, you know, even in the time since we last discussed it, both of you have become Game Pass subscribers, at least at one point. So I imagine you'd be down to have it on Switch.
I think I still have it, but I don't play any.
I forgot to unsubscribe.
So both of you have it out of just circumstance. But if it was on Switch, would you take advantage of it while you had it out of circumstance, or are you totally over Game Pass?
Game Pass, sure, but I don't. If there is a Microsoft service coming to the Switch, I don't think it's Game Pass. I think it'd be xCloud.
Well, Game Pass is xCloud. They're intertwined. I should clarify. You're right.
No, xCloud is
Game Pass. I said that backwards. Yes. You can't do xCloud, I don't think, without Game Pass unless you have an Xbox streaming on your same Wi-Fi, right?
Correct. No, right. I believe you can just, because they also announced xCloud is coming to PC and Xbox. So I believe it's just streaming. It doesn't necessarily have to be from an Xbox.
So if it's just, okay, so yeah, I should clarify. So
it's just a streaming service. That's all it is. It's a streaming service.
Yeah, so it would be xCloud on Switch, which I imagine would mean they could put Game Pass on Switch because they just stream the games over. Yeah, you're not going to be able to download stuff to your Switch. I agree.
Exactly. And when I say that Game Pass won't be coming on, I mean like you are not natively downloading games onto your Switch.
I 100% agree. It's going to be entirely xCloud based. Yeah.
Yeah, theoretically, you will have Game Pass, but it will be through the form of xCloud.
Right, which, you know, isn't that wild considering Control does that on Switch.
Control and
Hitman 3 does that on Switch. Yeah. In Japan, Assassin's Creed and Resident Evil do that on Switch. So would you, I mean, I guess there's some minor latency issues if you were to do that, but assuming it's good enough, that seems like a kind of a cool way to experience some other games.
I mean, it always depends on the game, too, for sure.
Right, yeah. Like, shooters won't work as well as, say, I don't know, some slower-paced adventure game or whatever. But, yeah, so my question at this point, even based on what we were just saying, isn't so much like, is Microsoft going to put xCloud on Switch? That seems like they want to. My question is really whether Nintendo is actually down for xCloud on Switch. I mean, clearly, if something is brewing here, it seems like they are, right? But the conversation when we last talked about this 2 years ago was so focused in the in that point in time in the past on why Microsoft would do it, we kind of didn't look at what it could mean for the Switch ecosystem. And to be clear, I don't mean like the library of exclusive Switch experiences. Like if I were to pull up the March MPD sales numbers right now, Monster Hunter Rise is the month's second best-selling game. Super Mario 3D World's number 4. Mario Kart 8's number 8. Mario Kart 8's number 6. Animal Crossing's number 8. Mario 3D All-Stars, because it was about to get discontinued, was number 9. Like, I would strongly wager none of that would change if xCloud and Game Pass came to Switch, because first and foremost, Switch is a Nintendo machine for Nintendo experiences. And Monster Hunter being the exception here, all those are first party. And even in the case of Monster Hunter, Nintendo practically markets
only
that thing.
for a year.
Right, but then it goes to PC, and only PC. But Nintendo's marketing Monster Hunter at this point as if it's their own. It's been closely tied to them minus World ever since the 3DS. So, like, I think that one would still be fine. Like, seriously, if you drill down into the top 10 of Switch-only software, every single game except Monster Hunter is a first-party release. If you combine that with the fact that Switch once again was the top-selling hardware for the month, then, perhaps people are at least up front buying Switches as Nintendo machines. There's not really a bold proclamation or anything to say that. That's just what it is. But once you have your Switch, once you start dabbling in third-party content and indie games, that's where I think Game Pass, xCloud, whatever you want to call it, can have an impact on Nintendo. Like, here's how it currently works. When you publish a game to the eShop, whether you're Activision or WayForward, Nintendo will take a cut of every purchase made. The exact amount, I think, is under an NDA, but the general consensus seems to be it's about 30%, which is what Apple also does and other platforms also do. Actually, Nintendo's nicer than Apple. Apple charges $99 just to have the license to be able to bring your game to their system or their service, their platform, iOS. Nintendo does it for free. But anyway, let's say the $30 or 30% is true. 30% of every single game sold on the eShop can become a lot of money very quickly. Back in their January financials, Nintendo was saying that their digital sales generate 250 billion yen, which is the equivalent of $2,316 million in just the 9 months from April to the end of the year last year. And even though, first-party games obviously were a big chunk of that, they sell like gangbusters, you can't deny that a huge chunk of it is because of their slice of every eShop game sold. So if I'm Nintendo and I see Game Pass, one thing that's got to at least be on the forefront of my mind is what happens to all that money. Because right now, cloud games on Switch, they are a thing. And, we just rattled off a couple. They're all streaming from a server, but they're all individual purchases with individual eShop listings, meaning for Nintendo, they get individual chunks of change from each one of those games. Game Pass and xCloud, that's all through a single portal. And Nintendo wouldn't necessarily get a direct cut of those individual games. So what's interesting to hypothesize is what does that mean, both for Nintendo and for some of the games that would be on the system. Obviously, for Nintendo, they could cut some deals some other way and get money from Microsoft, but what about, like, indies? Because Game Pass is a great way for indies to get some attention. Like, there's this game called Rain on Your Parade I stumbled across the other day, in which you're a little rain cloud. Your literal job is just to rain on stuff. It kind of has, like, a Katamari vibe in that you sort of interact with the world and kind of run amok. And it launched, I think, simultaneously on Switch and Game Pass. And the way I discovered it was by seeing a tweet from the developers who very excitedly, and rightfully so, shared that the game had over 150,000 players on Game Pass, which is great for them. That's really awesome. But to my broader point, if indies end up performing better on Game Pass than on the eShop, and if Game Pass subscriber numbers grow to whatever necessary factor, what's to stop a developer from deciding it's just easier to develop their one game for Game Pass, make it available for Switch that way? And that means less money for Nintendo, and perhaps more crucially, less accessibility for the broader Switch user base. So again, I'm just sort of spitballing here about what could happen with Game Pass. This is actually the issue Apple had when they tried to put Game Pass on iOS. They wanted each cloud-based Game Pass game to be individually listed so they can make money off each game. And they went so far when Xbox said no as blocking Game Pass entirely as an app. So now you have to put it in your browser. But, it's kind of an interesting question. Like, the Switch is thriving right now, and the indie scene is thriving. But if you bring in a thing with a flat rate, that does shake things up. And some games, of course, won't be affected. Some games won't launch on Game Pass until a certain later release window, and thus they can still come to Switch as individual releases. Like, I think Crash 4, It's About Time's a good example of that. Thanks in large part to its Switch release, Activision saw it go from, like, number 256 on the charts in February to number 16 in March, and that's something, developers can do. They can have a game sell one way and then switch it later and get a secondary boost. So sure, and that can give, Switch the individual releases. And it's also, again, worth emphasizing, it's not like Microsoft is going to pay Nintendo to do this. Surely there's some sort of bigger deal being concocted to ensure that Nintendo feels comfortable with whatever money they can make. Never mind the fact that for some people, maybe Game Pass itself is a system seller. Like perhaps some Xbox diehards will pick up a Switch Lite for $200 because they want to stream Forza or whatever when they're on the go. And maybe they'll get that new snazzy blue one that they just announced the other day. I don't know. But because it's all such new terrain, it's kind of interesting just to sort of think through the chess moves in a way. Like in the past, I know I've given pause for cloud-based services because of the ideas of game ownership and preservation, but that's me as the end consumer. Like the economics of it for Nintendo, even just for individual developers and what Game Pass on Switch could mean for them and their reach, like it's really interesting. So I think we're both right, Kevin, that xCloud's gonna show up on Switch, and I don't know what that means for Switch, and I don't know what that means for the games, but it's kind of interesting just to think through all the like dominoes that fall the second they do that. And whether they fall in one direction or another, hard to say, but things are going to change if it comes to Switch. That's just the nature of the business. So there's your answer. That's a non-answer, Kurt. Who knows? Unless, I don't know, do you guys have thoughts? Do you think it's going to go one way or the other? Do you think I'm being overly dramatic?
I don't know. I honestly, like, for these kind of things, like, I just have no idea. You definitely want to, as Jason just so eloquently put it, I'm just going to agree with him.
Eloquently, that's a nice way of saying talk for like 15 minutes straight. But yeah,
I mean, whatever. I mean, like, if they do end up, like, going through with something like this, I do hope, like, Nintendo's just ready for this kind of thing. Maybe, I mean, especially because, like, for the first time ever, I've had my console actually straight up just, like, freeze up on me and put out this warning that says the console has become too hot. Will shut down until it cools down or something like that.
Really? Your Switch?
Yeah, my Switch has done that twice already. Once,
wow.
When playing Monster Hunter, another time when playing Ring Fit Adventure.
Ring Fit's not even that intense.
Yeah, because the fans are... Yeah, I think the fans are just starting to give out. And so I am, like, more so, like, now in the market for a new Switch. Even more, like, more than just, like, oh, I just want a more powerful one. Like, I just need one that will survive for a while. Like, this one, it just feels like it's on its last legs. So if they are ready to announce something more powerful, yeah, please do it soon. And, if it means it'll play better with these kind of new services that could potentially appear, then even better. But, yeah.
I do think as a Nintendo-only gamer, the potential that this has is really exciting. Because I'm not necessarily going to go buy an Xbox and go buy all these games, but, like, if I do a couple months of Game Pass, I can at least dabble. Like, Forza Horizon is so fun. Like, I think I've said this on the show before, but every E3 where they have Forza Horizon, I just go and play it for, like, a long time at the booth, just because I'm never going to play it any other way, but it's really fun. Like, I'll just do the demo over and over. It's like the perfect arcade racer for me. So, if that's on Game Pass and that's on Switch, sure, sign me up. But, like, I'm not necessarily going to spend $300 for that, and then another $60. So... yeah, I think there's some potential there, and I realize that flies in the face of all my concerns about ownership and preservation, but whatever. That's the way the industry's going. I've come to accept it. I mean, what about you, Ken? Do you think there's some interesting potential here?
If they bring xCloud to Switch, yeah, absolutely, because there are people out there that are Nintendo exclusive that don't get to play all these amazing games on other platforms as yourself. So the fact that, yeah, you will finally be able to dabble into some other great games is very exciting. It makes it for a better community, I guess I would say. The fact that it's pro gamer, I guess. Is what I'm trying to say.
And that's something Phil Spencer's so big on.
Yeah, exactly.
So if it were to happen, it would happen under him. Yeah.
Exactly.
And, like, if there's ever a time that Nintendo would be open to something like this, like, it would be now. Like, this is the Nintendo that seems so at ease with partnerships with other companies. I mean, obviously Universal, Super Nintendo World, although that's now closed due to COVID. And then there's the Lego Mario toys, which now include Lego Luigi. And then, just to kind of put a period at the end of that thought, our final topic of today's show, there's a new partnership that's perhaps even more out there, but again, shows Nintendo's flexibility of working with people now, which is a partnership with Fujifilm. You guys know their Instax printer at all and camera thing? Fujifilms?
I thought that was like the actual form of the camera, and then I was like, "Oh,
It's
that's
both.
cool," but then that was just the case, so I was like less motivated.
Well, to dissect what you said a little. So, so Fujifilm makes these little self-contained cameras and printers with Polaroid-style pictures that you can like physically print out. It actually uses heat to press the images, which is kind of interesting. I didn't realize that. So they're in real time. You don't need to shake them out like a Polaroid. They're just ready. And yeah, they are now doing a collaboration with Nintendo where they are – the thing you're talking about, I think, Angel, is they're slapping a Pikachu frame around one of their Instax mini links, which is one of their printers you can get for $120. They're also going to make a Switch color-schemed Instax mini printer for $100. That it's basically gray, but has like a little hint of red and blue like the Switch. But yeah, the idea is they're doing all this because what you're going to be able to do is use their Instax Mini Link app. God, that's a lot of words. To now take the screenshots from your Switch using the sharing QR code on the Switch, put them into the app, guzzy them up with some special frames and themes and filters around Mario, Animal Crossing, and new Pokemon Snap, and then print them out. So it's kind of this hybrid of like two previous physical photo projects Nintendo had in their in their arsenal in the 90s. They had the screenshot printing with the Pokemon Snap stations at Blockbuster, and this is like the 21st century version of that. It even comes out on the same day as new Pokemon Snap. And then they also had the frames and editing of the Game Boy camera and printer, which your phone's now the Game Boy camera, and the printer is the Game Boy printer. So it's kind of a fun little wacky side project, it feels like, for them. It's going to work with any Instax Mini. You don't need to buy the Nintendo-themed ones. But they are doing those two special ones to kind of celebrate the collaboration. Huge missed opportunity to not do a Zelda-themed one, considering it's called the Mini Link. But what are you going to do? But yeah, what I find kind of interesting about this is, again, Nintendo never gives up on an idea. I mean, usually when I say that, they go bigger than the prior attempt, like Virtual Boy becomes 3DS.
It's going to be the name of a book you write.
I know. It's going to be my memoir. The life story of Jason. Nintendo never gives up on an idea.
Never going to give you up.
Never going to let you down. Yeah, but oh god, why did I just say that back? Anyway, yeah, so Virtual Boy becomes 3DS, e-reader becomes Amiibo. That's kind of their MO. You could argue GameCube, Game Boy Link cable becomes Wii U. But here it's interesting because Nintendo took what was a big 90s trend, photo sharing, but now understands that so much of it has moved online that any attempt to really revive it in a meaningful way is actually now rather niche. So we're not seeing a huge marketing push like the Game Boy printer had. We're not seeing the massive physical presence of the Pokemon Snap Blockbuster kiosk. But we are seeing them taking an opportunity to toy with an idea of physical photos in the more niche like space that now exists for it. Like they're leveraging an existing camera and its branding. They're all their games still have online photo sharing as the main feature. New Pokemon Snap has a whole like ranking system for them. Animal Crossing obviously has it. But this is like, hey, if you like photos, like so do we at Nintendo. So here you go. Have fun with it. I think what makes a little less sense than the idea of why it exists is the pricing. It's $100. I mean, I get it. It's a printer, but it's $100 for the standard or Switch colored Instamax Mini, and $120 for the one that has the Pikachu frame around it. Which maybe I'm not the right demo for this, but it seems kind of high, especially when you factor in that 20 photos, like a roll of 20 costs $14, meaning you're paying $1.42 for every single image you print, which is more than the Pokemon stations were.
It is, but I mean, the alternative is to, go through that process of sending them to your phone, or I guess tweet them out and then print them out from your computer.
Well, see, you still have to send it to you still have to scan it as if you scan it to your phone. But yeah, like funny enough, the thing I'm almost more
or you could tweet it, but yeah, that's
right. That's true. The thing I'm more like on board with is I kind of want to just download their free app and just mess with the filters and mess with the frames and stuff, and then just save those images digitally. Like I don't need the physical ones, but I do like the idea of like kind of cropping Pokemon Snap photos or like adding some silly filter or like that could be kind of fun. But then I'm sort of bypassing
there's no harm in just
whole.
doing that.
Yeah. But is anyone gonna buy one?
Well,
for $100?
Nope. Well, not me.
I wasn't
when
even.
I say nope, I mean
I wasn't even planning on getting Pokemon Snap, so I guess
really you're not. I am.
I don't know what made you think I would.
I don't know, actually. There's no reason you would. I have no idea.
I mean, I liked the first one, but I think that's kind of what you could leave it as. Like, I just liked it. It was just like yeah, it was fun, but I'm not really looking forward to replaying it or I don't know if there's like a bunch of chat tots in the level, maybe. But
I mean, I'll let you know.
I'll
pick
wait.
it up next Friday.
Let me know. Keep me posted.
Yeah, and honestly, the printer's like a pretty good stopping point for this episode in terms of like topics, because it's sort of a bridge into our next one where I will have impressions of new Pokemon Snap.
I mean, the sad reality kind of is like, as nice as like the animations and interactions look in that game, it's like, yes, I'm still getting to Monster Hunter. There's still some Smash Brothers going on. Like, I need to be extremely selective with what games I get
because
like,
there's only so much time.
Like, I'm just, we're only here into the pros for so long, and I mean, Ace Attorney comes out in July, so geez, I have to finish that. We're still playing some Tales games. My God, but yeah,
Tales of Arise just had a release date too.
Yeah, that's true.
I think it's September. Yep.
Yeah.
Except this time, I'm gonna buy it once it's on sale because I've made the bad choice of getting the last 4 Tales games on release day
and then
for
just
like
not
the full
playing
price. Well, yeah, we're like slowly getting to them. We just started one of the 4, but like by the time we start them, they're like $19.99 new.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right.
So might as well wait.
Tales of Arise also isn't multiplayer too, so you'll be fine there.
It's not?
No. Have you seen the gameplay?
Way to drop a bomb on him at the end here.
I haven't seen anything about it because I figure, like, what's the point in looking into them if I'm not going to get to it?
Well, the point is to know if it's not multiplayer.
It looks like a totally different game series as far as like combat and stuff like that goes.
Damn, we usually get these because they're multiplayer. Maybe the Switch one will be multiplayer, I guess. Whichever Tales game that ends up being.
Whichever and whenever. That thing was announced ages ago.
Yeah, but I mean, they're just getting this one out there.
Yeah, they announced the Tales series will be coming to the Nintendo Switch, and that's as far as they got.
Has there been any ports of any of the games?
Nope. Weirdly.
I mean, we have Tales of Vesperia on the Switch.
Do we?
Wasn't
that the 3DS it came to? Oh, you're right. Yeah. Okay.
Just Tales of Abyss.
Yeah.
Yeah, the used to be Xbox exclusive that now got ported to everything.
I feel like they're at the point in
which
the
was
Tales...
apparently also a really good one.
I feel like they're at the point in the Tales series lineage and the nostalgia lineage and the 90s and early 2000s trend where they could totally do a quick and dirty remaster of Tales of Symphonia and have it sell pretty well. I mean, it's still the best-selling Tales game in the US. No, but on Switch.
They did that
on
last generation.
On Switch. Because all the Nintendo people loved the GameCube one. So...
Yeah, apparently the PS3 HD remakes or whatever were also based on the PC port, which apparently was also really bad.
So again, my original statement still stands that they should remaster the GameCube one and bring it to Switch. Because the other one was a failure, I guess. Or not a failure, but didn't do what it was supposed to do for fans.
Yeah, it just had performance issues or something like that.
Yeah.
But, yeah. Well, we can hope. But they better take their time with it because, still got a while to go.
And it sounds like Pokemon Snap is not part of that journey for you.
Nope.
But it will be for me. Kevin, are you getting Pokemon Snap?
Nope.
Okay, it will be a journey for me and me alone, and you can hear all about it on the next episode of the Random Tale podcast. Plus, you guys are going to love the next episode.
I do expect you to post pictures of Bidoof. And
dude, for sure. Yeah, I'm only going to post pictures of Bidoof. You kidding? We have so many
better
Bidoof
name
pictures.
them as well.
We have so many Bidoof pictures. I still can't get over that the Pokemon Company on April Fool's sent an email that just said Bidoof in the subject line, Bidoof on the call to action button, Bidoof in the body, and just had a picture of Bidoof. That was it. And all it did was link to a fan cam video of Bidoof. Like a minute and a half, just music medley of Bidoof. It was great. It was the best. I don't think there's anything else to say in this episode after that, like how you top that. So I'm just going to wrap it. Yeah, Pokemon Snap, next episode. Also next episode, Nintendo's full fiscal year financial report is going to be out. Comes out on my birthday. Thanks, Nintendo. What a gift. Expect some... What?
That just means numbers.
Well, no, it doesn't just mean numbers because there's potential when they do the fiscal year ones to also include some news. So we'll see. And if it's numbers, we'll try and make it a little more than just numbers. But that all arrives on May 9th, which is the perfect Mother's Day gift. But first, on May 2nd, which is this coming weekend, the return to Quarantine Chronicles after quite the hiatus. Because, the Angel and Jason Power Hour, as glorious as it was, does not count as a QC. But now
Season 2, baby.
Yeah, here we go. So to make sure you don't miss QC, to make sure you don't miss the next episode, to make sure you don't miss any other surprise Power Hours, subscribe to us on all the podcast apps: Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, TuneIn, iHeartRadio, Pandora. We're also on YouTube. RamNintendo.com is our channel. And you can follow us individually on the Twitters. I am JSR7. Angel is WEIRO_O. Kevin is KVN Gomi. And speaking of Kevin, you're up. Final word.
Sparkling ice for life.